All right, kids. All right, school starts in about 30 seconds here, so find your seat, get a last shot of coffee here, or make sure you're strapped in. So. Last year, we moved here because we had outgrown the Moss Center. Today we sold out. We've got 350 seats in here. I talked to Dr. Boltman a couple days ago, and I said, do you have anything bigger? Is there another place? Because we're thinking in a year or two. And he said he had one down the road here a little bit that could hold a few more. So we'll see what happens. Good morning. On behalf of the over 10,000 children between the age of 0 and 5 who are not yet in kindergarten, and they're our customers, thanks for being here. My name is Bruce Loss. I'm chair of Ready for School. We're really excited again this year to have this group here. You look around the room, the excitement that we have as a board and as a leadership group is the diversity and complexity of this group. It's educators, it's daycare, it's faith-based, it's government, it's many of the additional support charity groups, it's businesses. We've just got a lot of moving parts with Ready for School. And that's been one of those magic pieces of the formula that have really helped this get traction. So thanks for being here, first of all. Three things just by way of setting the table. First of all, we're going to do a bit of a report card. As you know, that's the look back stuff. Part of Ready for School by design is ready. I mean, we're getting ready. So we aren't going to spend a lot of time looking back. We're going to much more look forward. So today we're going to talk not only about some of the trailing indicators that highlight where we've come, and as we all know, and again, we're going to reiterate the goal and talk a bit more about that going forward here, but we're going to start with the report card. And this is one of the few organizations that throws an event like this to say, here's how we did. So it better be good. Number two, well, I talked about the leading versus trailing indicators, and I'm as excited as anything about our leading indicators. What are the things that we're seeing that are impacting, and we'll share some really good data about the work that you all are doing in many of the task force groups and other activities. So that's a big part of today. Third and most important is we've got a date 3 years from today. Our goal as a group is to, by the year 2015, so 3 years from today, we're going to have to start selling tickets now if we're going to have it in this house because it's going to be full. Our goal is 75% of kids going into kindergarten are measured by our common standard in this community of being ready for school. And that's the goal. So everything that we talk about, everything as we review, but more importantly look forward, is saying We've got a target, we've got a plan, 75%, 3 years from today. We got a lot of stinking work to do. So thanks for what you're doing. And again, part of today is reporting, but also charging the faithful and saying we've got more to do, and hopefully we can accomplish that as well. So we've got a great program today. Sterling is going to be joining us. We had dinner last night with a couple of folks, and what I said this morning, we should just take the whole agenda and pitch it, give Sterling the mic and let him go, because you're in for a treat. He's got a vast amount of knowledge and passion for this topic as the CEO and president of the 5th largest private foundation in the United States. For him to show up in Holland, Michigan for our little deal is a really, really big deal. So we're really excited to have Sterling here. So I'd like to, at this point, introduce Joe. Joe Graham is a part of our Faith Task Force, and Joe is going to give our invocation. Thanks, Joe.
I'm a new father again just 3 weeks ago, so Pat asked me to bring a picture of my new family. As a young father who works in the faith community in this great place we call Holland, New Zealand, young children are my passion right now. I'm a young father, and their well-being and the well-being of all the children in this community are really important. And so please pray with me this morning as we begin our program. Gracious God, you have gathered us here today to draw our hearts and minds around a movement and initiative in our community that is close to your heart. We praise and thank you for the resources and efforts that were put forth so that we could come together this morning and fellowship with one another and learn about the important work of Ready for School. We are grateful for Ready for School. We are grateful for its vision to ensure a better beginning for the children of our community. Please be with us this morning as we hear about the good work that has already been done, but also about the great need that still exists. Give us eyes to see and hearts to listen for the gentle whisper of your voice that desires for every young child to be cared for in a way so that they are prepared to be ready for school and ready for life. May we be a people who are captivated by this vision and people who do our part to ensure that every child is ready. In your name we pray, amen.
Thanks, Joe. We're going to have a number of speakers this morning. One of the things that you're going to see as people are up here is we're all here because someone helped us get ready for school. And so as you see speakers up here, you're going to see part of their network of who are the people that they're helping with. And I think the greater initiative of Ready for School has really been to say there are families that don't have the networks that we all enjoy to get us where we're at. So you'll see pictures that kind of open that up for each of the speakers as they talk this morning. We'd like to thank Huntington Bank for being our sponsor this morning, and the next guy up here, Scott Remensnyder, has been really a true supporter of Ready for School from the beginning. Involvement in Ready for School, the chair of the preschool and also the school task force. He's also been a great connection with us with the Head Start program, as he's the past chair of the board of that organization. So join me in welcoming Scott.
Wow. Good morning. Thank you, Bruce, Pat, Sterling. Thank you, Ready for School staff, board, and the army of volunteers that supports this initiative. Thank you, administrators from our public, private, charter schools. Thank you, board members from those schools. And thank you, community leaders, for being here this morning with all of us. I would be remiss if I did not thank Huntington Bank for being in charge of the weather this morning. It is a beautiful spring day in December, and we appreciate that. A few years ago, Bruce was in charge, and I think we shut down every school, had about 3 feet, and quite a blizzard. So.
And filled the house.
And filled the house. It is so good to be with all of you this morning. It is beyond incredible to stand up here and see this room bursting at the seams. You were all here because of a conversation that started and took place in 2007. That conversation sparked a journey. And that journey that we began together as a community is now a full-scale march. This community, and more specifically those of you in this room today, are committed and engaged in the relentless pursuit of school readiness in our respective neighborhoods. As an early volunteer with Ready for School, you can appreciate how pleased I was, and still am today, that my employer, Huntington Bank, also elected to support the initiative early on. It is truly a privilege to work for a company that is passionate about doing the right thing. A company that understands the science behind readiness, the math and the return on investment that can be achieved with the right intervention and the right leadership. We have both of those things going on here today. At Huntington, we are so grateful to have the opportunity to give back to our communities. We choose to invest our time, talent, and resources where we live and work, because together, we, along with all of you, will make our communities stronger. It is our way of investing in the future of our neighbors, our colleagues, our families, and yours. You are all here this morning on purpose. As leaders engaged in the relentless pursuit of child readiness, you recognize that this is not a simple undertaking. We won't turn the ship around overnight, but we will turn it around. And in many ways, we already are. We all understand what is at stake. We have some great ideas, some fantastic tools and resources and partners working with us in this important pursuit. And we also have that West Michigan intangible that we all know and love so well, that thing that allows us to preserve, protect, and invest in this community collectively and individually. And in this case, investing in the future of this community, which is very much ours as well. Huntington Bank would like to thank all of you for your support for Ready for School. We appreciate the investments made and the investments yet to come. By pooling all of our collective knowledge, our gifts, our resources, and our experience, we will continue to prepare for that first Ready class. And once again, we sincerely appreciate all that you do for this community and all that you do for Ready for School. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. And again, a great example of individual and organizational support, and that's been part of the magic of all of this stuff. So thanks again for your support, Scott. 2010, a guy by the name of Tony Berkeley showed up in town here, and we spent some time with him. He's part of Sterling's organization. And that really began our journey, which today is over a $2 million commitment that the Kellogg Foundation has made in Ready for School, which at this point is, goes through 2014. Very significant financial engagement, and in the time we've spent with Sterling, I think his knowledge and excitement and passion about this topic certainly is equal or greater than the impact of the financial benefit for this community. So we're really, really excited. His background is everything from being a 7th, 8th grade English teacher, worked at Apple Computers in California in the early days. Since 2006, he's been leading, as I said, the 5th largest private foundation. And his focus has driven that foundation to be totally on education and learning. So this guy is wired in our strike zone. Please join me in welcoming a great friend of Ready for School, Sterling Spring.
Good morning, everybody. Bruce, thank you for that introduction. And I am not just honored, but very excited to be with you all here this morning. In my brief remarks, I would like to share a little historical as well as contemporary context of why the W.K. Kellogg Foundation is so invested and excited about the work you're doing here. And I was struck, as Scott was saying this, it was conversations at the Kellogg Foundation in 2007 that probably led us to have our paths converging in 2012 and a few years earlier. I also have to acknowledge my longtime friend and trustee Dottie Johnson, who has been a champion of this work in early childhood at the foundation and has really helped us forge this commitment to kids from their prenatal ages to age 8. I also am thinking about Joe as a new father, and seeing these pictures, there is no question that what is at stake for our children begins at birth. And I think one of the most profound changes we may see in this country is for people to think about education not starting in kindergarten, but absolutely starting at birth, and probably even prenatally. So let me thank you for inviting me here. A lot of my work goes back to Will Keith Kellogg. A lot of people only know Will Keith Kellogg as a very successful inventor of the cornflake who built an entirely new business and industry. What most people don't know is Will Keith Kellogg, for his first 45 years of his life, struggled to find his way to become a faithful steward. When he himself dropped out of school in the 5th grade, sold brooms door to door for his low-income parents, and really didn't know what was going to happen to his life. And so he cared about vulnerable children because he was one himself. And our current commitment to this early childhood world really goes back to something Mr. Kellogg said very faithfully. The reason he dropped out of 5th grade was that he couldn't see the blackboard. And later he told this story, and I have this quote from one of his biographers. He said, "When I was a boy in school, the teacher thought I was dim-witted because I had difficulty reading what was on the blackboard. I was 20 years old before I myself found out what was the matter. I was nearsighted. A proper medical examination would have settled that the day I entered school. Since then, I have often thought of what science can do for underprivileged children if they can be taken in hand at the proper time." And I think what the Ready for School initiative does is say we must take our children in hand at the proper time, which is in the critical first 5 years of their life. So I want to talk a little bit about how the Kellogg Foundation has come to this focus and why the Ready for School initiative is in the strategic bullseye of what we're trying to do here in Michigan and around the country. When I came to the foundation in 2006, Dottie's heard me say this, I had to ask myself 3 questions. What did Mr. Kellogg want the foundation to be? What does the world need the Kellogg Foundation to be? And of course, practically speaking, what can the foundation be? Well, the answer to the first question was crystal clear. I like to tell people, may you all be blessed with founders whose hearts are pure, whose intent is clear, and whose hands are off. He said to the board and staff at the beginning of the foundation, he said, do whatever you please, so long as it promotes the health, happiness, and well-being of children. So our commitment is to children and to vulnerable kids. He never lost that connection, even though he became a self-made man and gave most of his personal fortune to create the foundation in 1930. He never forgot how much he cared about children. He cared about kids in rural communities who lacked the opportunities of kids in big cities. He cared about kids with physical disabilities. He cared about kids who were poor, or as he said, the children of needy parents. He cared about kids that faced racial discrimination. So we have taken that to heart, and our mission says we are looking for communities who want to create the conditions of success that will propel vulnerable children to a lifetime of opportunity and achievement, both as individuals and as members of their community. Well, the second question, what does the world need the Kellogg Foundation to be? I don't think I need to tell this audience the alarming trends and statistics that we hear about every day. Driving up yesterday from Battle Creek on Michigan Public Radio, talking about the fact that truly, if you look at the statistics, only 17% of our children are really ready when they leave high school to do college work. They may graduate at a higher rate. We hear these statistics all the time. But what I shared with some of your colleagues last night as dinners, we know the cost of failure. We hear about it every day on the radio, on television, in our prison budgets, in our unemployment statistics, in our lack of talent for our workforce. What we don't know, and my challenge to you all in Ready for School is, what is the cost of success? We have a lot of science, we have a lot of economics that supports what you all are doing. But no community in this country has yet discovered not only the cost of success, but how to build a civic enterprise that takes what we know and creates that success for its children. So that's why we feel the community needs us to find partners like Ready for School to explore this uncharted territory. Well, the third question was, what can the foundation be? As many of you know, starting in 1930, we started in health and in education. And we started in 7 rural counties just south of here. And our DNA was powerfully shaped at that moment because our distinctive approach to philanthropy was, you must work with the community, you must bridge the community with the professionals, the academic institutions, and get that community to invent its own solutions to its problems. So health and education, and more recently we've added family economic security to the 3 core areas that we work. Final question then, what can we be, is let's not change what we're good at. We have led, the Kellogg Foundation for the last 30 years has been quietly supporting agriculture and then integrated farming and then farm to school. And the revolution we're now seeing in healthy food didn't start when people realized we had an epidemic of childhood obesity. It started many decades ago. And as many of you know who have built businesses and grown families, it often takes at least 20 years to be an overnight success. And so the exciting work that's happening in food was really seeded by many of our partners and grantees over several of the last decades. So I say to you that what I see in Ready for School answers 4 fundamental questions for the Kellogg Foundation. Who are you working with? It's children, and especially vulnerable children. How are you working? For us, it's place-based, it's integrated and multifaceted. It takes a very long-term time horizon to set its course and make a long-term commitment. I know you'll hear today about the statistics. Anyone who's built a business, or as I said last night, grown small children, nothing grows linearly. It doesn't march forward. Young children, especially, pediatricians always remind us, tend to have a little regression before they break through to the next developmental level. How could this darling 18-month-old turn into this terrible 2-year-old? We get through it. And I often think we've been given grandchildren to give us a second chance at parenting. So the Kellogg Foundation is among a small, but I think growing number of foundations that have decided to focus a large portion of our work on this age of prenatal years to 3rd grade, and to integrate all of our work in family economic security, food, health, and well-being, and education and learning, targeting parents and their very young children. We know, as Ron Lawley at WestEd and lots of early childhood experts have shown us now, that much of what gets in the way of learning in elementary school, middle school, and high school has to do with lessons missed, skills undeveloped, and experience that very young children had under less than optimal conditions. Now, one of our grantees is a former Kellogg Fellow, Dr. Jack Shonkoff, who is a pediatrician at Harvard Center for the Developing Child. And Jack is one of those people who can translate brain science into something that we ordinary people can understand. And scientifically, by itself, it is fascinating. But there's more than that. As Ellen Galinsky, one of our grantees, has written in her book, Mind in the Making, that's what's happening to our very young children. And David Brooks, columnist for the New York Times, in his wonderful new book, The Social Animal, reminds us that it's not just the conscious mind that's developing in early childhood, but the unconscious mind. And the innate gregariousness and hunger for fellowship that the human child has describes why children are constantly trying to connect with all of the adults around them. So we know that for infants and toddlers and preschoolers, there's no question that there's a common core curriculum that we're talking about for our K-12 systems. All of our young children, have experiences that in turn shape their expectations. And when they have those expectations met or unmet, it shapes their perceptions. I like to quote Bill Gates, who recently said, "Mankind's greatest advances don't come from its discoveries, but come from how it applies those discoveries to reduce inequity. And that's why what you're doing is to take what we know in this field and apply it. I said last night at dinner, no entrepreneur in the business world would hesitate for a moment to enter into a marketplace where all the research and development has been done. The proof of concept has been vetted and verified, and the return on investment is virtually guaranteed in just 5 years with ever-rising cash flows. What we lack, though, is a group of civic entrepreneurs who aren't building a for-profit business, but the profits are in the return of the incredible and dramatic change that happens when 5-year-olds walk into kindergarten ready to learn. And so I salute Ready for School for taking that on, because that's just what is happening. And I say to our friends in many educational discussions around the country, and in Michigan, most people, when you say education, think of the K-12 system. But we believe that one of the most powerful things that needs to happen is to redefine education, as I said earlier, beginning at birth. And it's the world that we adults shape, that infants and toddlers and preschoolers live in, that becomes the wellspring of their lifelong success. We definitely need all of our children to graduate high school ready for career and college and citizenship. But we will never achieve that until we first have an early childhood revolution. And that's what Ready for School is doing here in Holland, Zeeland, Hamilton. I first met Pat at a convening of all of our Michigan grantees a few months ago. And she was on a panel with grantees from Battle Creek and Grand Rapids and Detroit and a small rural community in the western slope of Colorado, down the street from Aspen, Colorado, where a lot of the working families live who work at Aspen. And as I heard Pat describe the Ready for School initiative, I knew we had started to invest in them since Tony's visit. But I was frankly struck not only by the report on what Ready for School is doing, but that sitting in the back of the room, and we were there for over 2 hours going deeper and deeper and deeper. This wasn't just a panel presentation on an early childhood education initiative. This was a panel presentation on community and civic engagement. And that is what's so powerful about your work. As I read this year's report, many people, when the foundation adopted this prenatal to 8 focus, thought, well, it must be, we're going to focus on education. And we have a lot of good reason to do that. Another of our famous quotes from Mr. Kellogg, 5 years into our work, he said, I'm really glad that the educational approach has been emphasized, because while children may need relief and raiment and shelter, the best opportunity to improve one generation over another is by education. And he said, and that's the education of the child, the parent, the teacher, the family physician, the dentist, and the community in general, were his words. Education offers the greatest opportunity to improve one generation over another. He had a very holistic approach to this work. And when I see Ready for School, not just an educational initiative working with early childhood providers in the public schools and the charter schools, it's working with the healthcare system. It's got Healthy Beginnings. It's working with the faith community. It's got so many employers and business leaders sitting at the table who see this obviously as an economic development issue. It is all of those things. But there are very few communities around the country now that are able to pull all these leaders and parts of our community together and to keep them at the table. And I have to recognize Janet DeYoung and the Community Foundation, having led a community foundation for 15 years in Silicon Valley. Community foundations are in a unique position to think about the community. But as good as we might be at incubating things, to sustain things, the community has to own this. And I can clearly see that's what's happened with Ready for School. So you have what we would call a whole child, whole family, whole community approach to this work. And you also have a distinctive advantage over many other communities, because the scale of Holland, Zeeland, Hamilton is of a scale that I know the social capital in this room that links to so much else is a fabric of a community that many other communities cannot easily access. It's fragmented. It's underdeveloped. And in fact, what I see you doing here, as we have said, is We know the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, but what we're doing in our age in the United States is realizing it takes a child to raise a village. Our fabric needs to be recreated. I look at everything Ready for School is doing. You're building a new village that has its focus on raising children. And even when you get to 75% of your kids and our kids ready for school by 2015, the skeptics and the other ambitious people will say we still have 1 in 4 children not ready. What are we going to do about that? Last night at dinner we talked about thinking about this work, and Bruce mentioned this, as a business opportunity, as the families we're working with, as a market, customers that we are desperately trying to understand, not only to encourage them, but to influence them, not only to support them, but to stimulate them. I'm saying you are asking what it takes to change individual and community behaviors so that community-wide norms and culture actually transform. We talked about how critical it is for parents and caregivers to share books with very young children, starting at 6 months. Now, what is the indicator Ready for School will create to say, we absolutely know that all of our parents are sharing books? I told the story last night about realizing how reading aloud, and even reading when some adults are not very good readers. I thought literacy, when I first came into this work many years ago, I thought literacy was just a problem for a few adults who had somehow slipped through the cracks and failed to learn to read. And when I discovered that, in fact, over 1/3 of our children routinely were not learning to read and read well by 3rd grade, I was frankly startled. And when I went to start doing this work almost 20 years ago in 1994, when the Carnegie Corporation published Starting Points, which again gave us the evidence of the importance of early childhood, I was taken to visit a woman who ran a sheet metal factory in the East Bay in San Francisco Bay Area. She had acquired the sheet metal factory as part of a divorce settlement, and the factory was operating in the red. And she wondered how, she's a former kindergarten teacher, and she wondered how she was going to get her employees with her to rebuild this enterprise. And she told me that most of her workers were males, mostly Latino and African American men. And so she decided to give every one of the men a book bag with his child's name on it, and created a lending library of children's literature in the corner of the factory. And every day the men came to work, they could leave their book bag on a library cart. She hired a full-time librarian, and the librarian would open the book and there'd be notes like saying, we love this book, can we keep it longer? Or could we have a book with more chapters, less pictures? Because children of her employees ranged from infancy to 12 or 13 or 14. But she told me, she said, Sterling, the men tell me when they go home at night, the children run to the front door and say, what book did you bring me, Daddy? And for all of our efforts to simply educate and inform parents about good behaviors, smart business people realize that information alone does not cause individual behavior to change. That all of us, as moral human beings, need incentives, rewards, the support, and a sense that our peers are acting in a certain way, whether they're our immediate family or our neighbors, in ways that cause us to think about adopting new behaviors. And I think that's what Ready for School is really about here in your community-wide work. So it takes a child to raise a village, and I think you're also exploring, as I said earlier, what is the cost of success? I would tell you why we are so excited about what you're doing at Ready for School is I know of no other community in this country, big or little, that has marshaled this amount of focus on this one overriding goal, which is all of our 5-year-olds ready for school. And because you're working with your schools, of course, they also need to march then strongly towards 3rd grade success and on to high school graduation. Because you're in a small group of communities that have taken up this goal and set your course, I know last night you said for 15 or 20 years. Nothing really does change if you're not willing to commit your lifetime to it, or at least a generation. But at this point, what you have started, and you're really quite early in the initiative, I would say is really remarkable. And I don't say that. I said last night, I would rather be here this morning than anywhere else in the United States, because this country is hungry for examples coming up out of our communities that show trends can be reversed, that human and community behavior can be influenced to higher levels of performance. We live in a state, we have a governor who really cares about early childhood. When Governor Snyder was elected, we first met with him and he said, I'm adopting a P20 framework. And he said, that's pre-K. And I said, Governor, I'd really like that P to stand for prenatal. And he turned on a dime. In his next public speech, he said, I have a P20 framework, that's prenatal to age 20. We have an Office of Great Start. We have an Early Childhood Investment Corporation. But the changes we know that will come to our communities won't come from Lansing. They won't come from Washington, D.C. They'll come from you. They'll come from this community. So that is why the Kellogg Foundation is so excited about being an investor in Ready for School. I'm reminded of the story of a young man who grew up in Kentucky some years ago and went out to Silicon Valley to make his fortune, and he was always trying to impress his mother with lavish gifts. And one year he sent her 2 exotic birds in a big cage, and he went on a business trip, and when he came back a week later, he said, Mom, how'd you like the birds? And she said, they was good. And he said, I can't believe you ate those birds. They spoke 5 languages. They sang opera. And she said, they should have said something. Well, not to do too strict an analogy, but our very young children do not have voice. They have the potential to sing opera and sing multiple languages. There are so many skills that we know get undeveloped in our own lives because of the chances we had in early childhood. And you are giving voice to your children. You are lifting up that commitment. And so we will be watching you, not only as investors to measure the results, but how you are reweaving this fabric of community, because it does take a child to raise a village. And I want to congratulate you and encourage you for the long haul in this great commitment. Thank you so much.
Well, the $2 million has been nice. The encouragement has been priceless. So thanks, Sterling. And I think just a couple of reflections to your point on healthcare. I think one of the areas that I didn't mention in the beginning that I think has been benchmark in this community has been the cooperation of many in this room on the healthcare side. And that cooperation has been a really important touch point of the P, and catching children when they're born and making that and the teamwork within this room, I think, has really got us on the front end of one of these leading indicators that we'll be talking more about. So, and then the other thing, and I don't have a chance in my comments to acknowledge additional people, but Pat Verdine has done a spectacular job as this group's leader, so I'd just like to acknowledge her as well. And Sterling and Tony said, keep an eye on her because she's going to make this thing work. So that's, we do pay attention. We don't always pretend like, we don't act like we are, but thanks again, Sterling, very much. Okay, we are on to community impact highlights. You should have at your table a little packet, which is a notepad, and there's the front page is just a couple of bullet points. As I talked about earlier, part of this is leading indicators, part of it is trailing indicators. And I'd just like to take a moment to highlight, first of all, some of the leading indicators and talk about where we were and where we are today. And I'd start out right at the first one, over 17,000 direct or indirect connections with children that needed to be intact. These are in our opportunity children. The number is higher than 17,006. All I'll tell you is last year on the same measurement system, we touched 9,000. So the jump from last year to this year on impact of children has gone from 9,000 up to over 17,000. I'll highlight a couple of the other ones. 2003 children received preschool assistance. tuition assistance. At this meeting last year, we had 81 that we had given for the 2011 year, and I think Bob Ellis was up here with me, and on the spot we said we're going to have a goal of 200, and Pat and others were kicking us under and over the table, and we did 203, and I said, so what's the goal for next year? And they said, well, 250 would be great because we're running out of spots in the preschool, so we agreed that our goal should be 300, and we'll figure out where we're going to get the stinking spots. So you got to show up next year to see how we do. 25 educational scholarships to early childhood professionals. So these are the people that are making the touches with kids. Last year was 9, and this year 25. If we jump down to the you see the 9 professional developments, 397 early childhood professionals attending training, the number of families in play groups, which is again focused in the opportunity zones that we're going after. The next one is another Healthy Beginnings, Intercare and Holland Community Health Center, 2,800 touches there, compared to last year, less than 1,500. So when you, again, look at making those early touches on the health care. Kinder Camp a year ago was one of those wonderful ahas. Last year we did it with 90 kids in one area. This year, 625, 46 classrooms, 16 schools. And again, there are many benchmark things that we're excited about this group doing. Certainly, Kinder Camp is high on the list. A couple of other, we're in the process of developing a parent training curriculum. We're going to be rolling that out next year. And this is really a very practical approach to saying, how do we help at-risk parents understand what are the things that they may not have gotten as children, but they need to do to drive the social change that Sterling talked about. So we're extremely excited about this focus. And then establish the first private-public preschool classroom in the country or county. And we've got really good cooperation and plans going forward for continued collaboration with those groups. And then the one other thing that I would highlight, we've talked from the beginning about saying, how do we brand Ready for School? How do we get parents in the opportunity zones to understand what Ready for School is, get some brand recognition, some understanding of these are people I can reach out to. A year ago, we've been tracking when we do the pre-test for every incoming kindergartner and their parents in all of the schools that are impacted in our entire organization, in our footprint. We've been tracking how many of the parents have heard of Ready for School and know what it does. And the first year we did it, we barely made it into double digits because nobody knew what it was. Last year, 35% of parents knew what Ready for School was. This year, we're up to nearly 45% of parents knowing what it is and that it is a resource. That is a number that, again, we believe, as many of these, are very powerful leading indicators that are going to drive where we're going forward. So those are the key leading indicators. It's hard to talk in detail about all of the moving parts at Ready for School. So what we did this year, we've got a short video that we'd like to show you that in 6 minutes or so will give you just a visual kind of experience of some of the moving parts, some of the kids, many of the volunteers, and many of you in this room.
It's mine, but it's stuck on the vine.
How do we get our children ready to be competent citizens in our world?
It takes years and lots of people all working together.
Things have changed in kindergarten. Expectations are different for 5-year-olds than they used to be. A lot is being expected of our kids these days.
That's tomato! That is a tomato, very good.
They are the leaders, right? They are the leaders of the future, and they'll be the ones to continue to help this community to thrive.
We're here for the kids. We're here to help the kids and these families.
I just love watching children learn from day to day, and I think that Ready for School has really opened Holland up to that.
The fourth one said, let's run, run, run.
I'm a retired school teacher who worked with kindergartners, saw that bridge that really needed to be built to connect things. I think it gives us the same language to use.
When I was approached about building bridges, I saw it as an opportunity to get together with other kindergarten teachers in the area, bring our ideas together so that there wasn't that gap.
Because we connect with the kindergarten teachers, we can make sure that our little 4-year-olds and even 3-year-olds are getting the education that they should be before they go into kindergarten so that they're really ready to go.
And she makes a picture using all of them, and they realize the value of each color.
And I think building the bridge leads us all toward those steps to get children ready for school.
When they first start, you can really tell which students have had a preschool experience and which ones have not. They're ready to learn, they have some social skills.
One of the big challenges for families is financially being able to support putting their child in a quality early learning and care program. Through scholarship assistance, Ready for School is definitely able to make sure that the kids that want to go to preschool and need to go to preschool are able to do that.
When we set up Kinder Camp, we set it up so that the children would be at the school without any other children being involved there, and so they had the freedom of walking through the hallways, being on the playground without other students. It's just a 3-day camp. It gave them the chance to get over that initial shock of, I'm leaving mommy, and now I have to go to this place where there's going to be a lot of kids. Kinder Camp has really given them the social and emotional needs that they have before they enter school.
Access to health is a really critical issue. We know that there are many health issues that come into play with regard to school readiness.
We just help catch problems that they might have, like delays early on before it gets too late, so we can help correct those in the early stage.
Yellow? See, yellow.
We go out there and ask, usually the mom, questions about developmental things. I'm just down there playing with little kids, seeing what they know and what they can or cannot do.
We are part of reinforcing the trust children and caregivers have with their healthcare provider.
What Healthy Beginnings has done is to fill in a hole or to create a connecting loop that I think hasn't always been there before.
With the centers that we work with the providers we work with, can be a part of catching kids before they fall into those cracks.
We're working very hard to link that child with services before they reach school so that they're more ready for school.
A very important piece is engaging parents.
About trust in relationships and going out and building that trust in relationships with the families in the community.
If you're really going to affect community change, that you really need to have that buy-in from all of the various stakeholders that are in your community.
Some of the connections that they need don't speak their first language and they don't speak English.
It really helps to have somebody here that when they come in, they feel comfortable speaking in Spanish. It is a huge Latino population in Holland, but we're seeing just a small percentage of them.
Go into the home and start building that trust, and then they're just really grateful.
Seeing the parents at home and their kids and just how welcoming and inviting they are, and that to me is probably the best part of it.
I know they are learning because just by learning the routine,
coming inside, what to do at the beginning of the playgroup, what is the rule, or what is coming next. I know they are learning.
I hope that Ready for School can be around for a long time.
I would love to see Ready for School expand outside of this particular community into other communities.
To me, Ready for School is vision, just the big picture in the community of just getting children ready for school and all the aspects that go with that.
Whole child, all facets of a child's life.
Communication. Before Building Bridges, I don't think I ever talked or had encountered a preschool teacher or a daycare provider.
Energy. There's a great energy around a common focus.
I would say responsible. That it's responsible to our community for finding ways to get our children prepared for school.
Probably generous, because they're just helping so many people, as many as they can.
Podría decir educación, porque no solamente educación para los niños, pero es educación para los padres.
I would say trust. Having trust from the individuals who are giving you advice, and also having trust in them. It's reciprocal.
Commitment. Ready for School is extremely committed to parents and families, to early learning and care programs, and Ready for School is definitely committed to children.
It gives you a bit of a feel of many of the moving parts. And again, for those of you that participated not only in this, but as we said before, volunteers, thanks for your engagement, and that's what's made the difference. So we talked about leading indicators. We got, I think, a passing grade from Sterling, the principal, as far as how we're doing. Our trailing indicator for this year, if you remember, when we first started, we were questioning whether we had 50% of our incoming kindergartners ready. We had a baseline in 2010 with a common set of measures saying 55%. Last year we went to 62% on the way to our goal of 75, and said in this meeting, 1 point does not a trend make. So last night, as Sterling reviewed our results, he said, and mentioned earlier that it's not always a linear thing. We did agree that statistically the results for 2012 are not different. The number ended up at 61%, but we added a larger group of children into the group. So we're basically holding at the 61-62 range on our way to 75 3 years from today. So while we'd love to stand up here and cheer and go, hey, we've got another trend in the uptick, we don't have that today, and I think the takeaway for us is we continue to focus on the leading indicators, the things that are going to drive those results, and we got to stick with our guns to hit our goal in 3 years. So that's the number. Thank you for your support and participation in that. I'd like to turn it over now to a couple of gentlemen who co-chair our employer task force. We started giving out Employers of the Year to kind of acknowledge organizations that are taking the lead on the employer side. So I'd like to ask Michael McPherson from Huntington and Jim Schottel from the Michigan West Coast Chamber to come up and give those awards. Thanks, guys.
Good morning. The Employer of the Year Award recognizes organizations that exemplify how a company can advance the work and awareness of Ready for School by promoting early childhood education, early education with their employees and awareness to parents in the community. Today we were going to recognize 2 outstanding organizations for their commitment to Ready for School. The relationship between Plascor and Ready for School started just a little over 2 years ago. Plascor employees adopted St. Francis de Sales preschool. Employees have taken part in bake-offs to buy books for school, for preschool, their preschool students. Last spring, they had an Easter basket drive to collect items for the children to use at school. This fall, they had a chili cook-off where the proceeds went to the preschool, and they collected dress-up clothes for those children. Their pride is quite evident when you walk into Plascor. And when you look at their corporate newsletter, there are pictures of smiling faces and activities that they have done. And I'm very proud at this point to give this award to such a passionate corporation and group. And we would call Kate Tahita up here to get their award.
Well, thank you. When Pat first approached us to become part of the Ready for School Task Force, I kind of sat back and thought, what could a company our size do that could contribute to Ready for School? But our generous employees and their deep and caring hearts just came forward. Victoria Van Kampen has been very instrumental in organizing and creating and putting all these drives together. We're very proud to accept this award, and on behalf of all the Plascor employees, thank you very much.
Okay, so this year we still broke the award down into a smaller employer and then a larger employer. But our second employer has been involved since the very beginning of Ready for School. And when I announce them, I think you'll see why. But even going back to the Holland Zeeland Community Foundation and how they identified early childhood and childhood development as a community issue, Gentex was one of those initial companies to discuss the problem. And they've been committed as an organization since the beginning. And you can see that they stay involved and support it fully. They knew it was important for the future of their workforce and our community. They've partnered with our Early Childhood Center in Zeeland, which now has 6 different preschools. They've provided tuition scholarships, so they're a big part of that 203 that you saw up there. And then this past August, they held a school supply drive, collecting items for preschools, and plans are underway for a science demonstration in early 2013. So we'd like to invite Deb DeVries to accept the award on behalf of Gentex.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Gentex Corporation, our team, we're really excited about this recognition and we appreciate it. You know, I have to tell you, it was a year ago today, or a year ago, that I attended the first Ready for School annual breakfast. And after the Employer of the Year awards were presented, I leaned over to some of my coworkers and said, why isn't Gentex up there? We need to do more. Next year, we're going to be the company who receives this award. So, like Michael said, we've been involved since the very beginning, and we have a strong passion at Gentex to help with childhood education. And but this past year, we made a commitment to do more, to make a bigger impact. So we did things like the preschool adoption. We did the school supply drive, like you can see the pictures there. There's like thousands of crayons up there. So our kids definitely have enough crayons for the year. But we understand that these kids, they're our future for the community. They're our future leaders. They're our future workforce. And so we're just really excited to be a part of this group and to work with all of you and to help with their development and their education. Thank you.
So we're obviously very proud of these two organizations, and some of the stats that I heard this morning in terms of how many people can identify Ready for School and know that we're out there, I think that's something that we can all do as employees and employers, just to engage more people in the community, and that's a way we can drive the recognition of Ready for School, and I think that's one of the steps and the ways to 75%. And to steal a term from Sterling, that strategic bullseye, I like that word, but I think for all of us, when you're looking at your strategic bullseye as a company, figure out some way that you can incorporate Ready for School into that. And we have a website that's out there now, and as a task force, we put together these toolboxes that try to make it really easy for you. And when you go out there and look at the pieces of the toolbox, you'll see the companies over the past 2 years, those 4 companies that have won the awards, they've contributed to that toolbox. And we're looking for best practices and ways to engage everyone in those, make that toolbox really big to make it easy for all of you to help with Ready for School. So with that, I think Pat was getting ready to come up. Come on up, Pat.
This morning when you all walked in, you were given a piece of paper, and you were asked to write down the answer to "A Ready Child Is." I'd like to invite to the stage Joel Tanis. He is our local resident artist who's got a love of painting and is closely connected to the joy of discovering the child in each of us. Joel will share with you what happens when the community comes together on behalf of our youngest children.
Good morning. Surprise. I've been in the back room working with toxic chemicals while you've been out here. We had this idea that I would create something on stage, and I knew that that would be a bad idea. So you didn't know, but you were participating in an art project this morning. Pat and I met earlier this fall, and she told me about Ready for School, and it hit all the things that I am passionate about. And we said, you know what, and she asked me, what can you do with us? And I'm like, well, maybe I could create a picture. I'm an artist. And so, you know, I do believe a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I wanted to create an image to leave you with today. And then when we were talking about an image, as I was looking at their stationery, I really realized that their tree image that they use so much, that they use as their symbol, is perfect. You know, the idea that we're growing a community, we're growing children together. And so what I did this morning is I wanted to include as many people as possible in this, because to let the process of this painting this morning actually be the message. Because the process of growing a child is not a solitary thing. It's not one person off in a room by themselves. Do you follow me? It's this whole room working together. So everyone that put down a word that said a ready child is happy, well, you have a responsibility to make sure that the children in our community are happy. People who wrote down things like is curious. What can you do to foster curiosity in children? What can you do to contribute to this program, to these things? There are just all these great things. There's some practical things like is immunized, is healthy. I know there's a lot that goes on with Ready for School here that deals with the physical well-being of a child. What can you do to be that part? It takes all those parts to come together, and then we grow a community, we grow a child. And so I took all your things, made a quick collage, and painted a tree this morning for you. Thanks. It's wet still, so you can look at it, but don't touch it. But I hope that idea is one you can take home with you, that you're part of a process of growth, and if whatever word you put down, we all have a piece of that responsibility. Thanks.
Thanks, Joel. Ready for School would not exist if it were not for this community's embrace and the goodwill of our partners. I'd like to thank our breakfast sponsors, Huntington Bank, Bank of Holland, Gentex, Innovation Health and Wellness, Macatawa Bank, Padnos, Plascor, Request Foods, Michigan West Coast Chamber of Commerce, and David and Liz Nitre. I'd like to recognize and thank all those that represent the heartbeat of our work. Please stand and stay standing. I'd like to represent our board of directors. If you please stand. I'd like to recognize the Readiness Council and stay standing. Anybody that is on our Readiness Council, please stand. I'd like to thank and recognize our task force and any other people that are on committees related to Ready for School. Please stand. All others who are involved as donors, volunteers, and advocates, please stand. Please give these folks a round of applause. Thank you. Events like these don't happen without a point person. And so I'd like to thank Colleen Hill, our Development and Marketing Director, for tending to the details. Would you please stand? I'd also like to thank the staff of Ready for School. Would the staff please stand up for Ready for School? Not only do these individuals bring their gifts and talents to this important work, they bring a strength of character and a passion that is essential to reaching our kids and families. Thank you. In closing, services and programming are well underway for 2013, but none more important than the engagement of our customers or families. We have made significant strides this year in gaining the trust of families within neighborhoods. But in order to succeed, we must intensify our efforts and remember that failure is not an option. Please consider a better beginning for our children. I'd like to thank each one of you for your support and wish you and your families a blessed holiday. Thank you.